אבינו מלכנו, אתה יודע את צרות שלנו, אדוני. תשלח נא את עזרתך, אדוני. תעזרנה אותנו, אדוני, כי רק אנחנו מאמינים בך. וחסרנו בך, אדוני. כל ביטחון אשר יש לנו זה בך. וגם אתה יודע את אויב, מה הוא עושה. ומי גם מי הוא. לא לי היום, אדוני, לתרון את הכבוד רק בך. תמלא את פי, כי אני יכול לדבר. כל נפלותיך, כל פלא נפלותיך, אדוני, וגם לבנך, שעשית לנו, וגם לאבותינו. היה איתנו, נא, אדוני, היום הזה, גם עכשיו, בבקשה, בזכות ישוע המשיח. All right, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Today's Torah portion is vayehi zaqeyn Yitschaq. Now, it was that Yitschaq was old, or had become old. We are in our, goodness, can you believe it? The 26th Torah portion in the ancient triennial cycle. And in today's Torah portion, there's so much to talk about, so I kind of had to shave off and narrow in our scope. So the Torah portion is Genesis chapter 27, verses 1 through 27. And the Haftarah is Yeshayahu chapter 46, verse 3, about 10 verses from there. And here we have our ancient Masorah. Sorry, I deleted the blue. I don't know why that's still there. I thought I deleted it. This is the, as I always share with you guys, the Westminster Leningrad Codex. And you can see where the communists that reviewed this, they love to write on the Sefer. So you can see some communists over there in Russia back in the day wrote the chapter on this ancient document for us. Just such disrespect, so foolish. And here you can see the Torah portion starts by vayehi zaqeyn Yitschaq. ותכהנה עיניו נפגעות. ויקרא את Esaw בנו הגדול. ויאמר אליו בני, ויאמר אליו הנני. So then it came to pass that Yitschaq was old, and his eyes grew dark. They were dark from seeing, meaning they couldn't see very well. So he summoned Esaw, his son, his older son, the bigger one. And he said to him, my son. And he said unto him, here I am. Everybody can hear me all right, yes? Yeah, okay. All right, thank you, Beth. So here we have where the Torah portion starts, a little bit easier to read. And we have the Kaf, which is 20, and the Zayin, which is 7, so there's 27. Yeah. Vayehi zaqeyn Yitschaq, ותכהנה עיניו נרות, ויקרא את עשיו בנו הגדול. ויאמר אלי בנו, pardon me, בני, ויאמר אלי הנני. So then it was that Yitschaq was old, and his eyes grew dim from seeing, so that he summoned Esaw his son, the bigger one, and he said unto him, my son, and he said unto him, here I am. So let's talk about this eyes growing dim. The verb is actually kaha. It's geminate with two hays in it. Doesn't show up in not many places. The Targum Yonatan translates, and it was when Yitschaq was old and his eyes were darkened from seeing, because when his father was binding him, he had seen the throne of glory. right? When he's up on top of Mount Moriah when he was just a boy. And from that time, his eyes had begun to darken, right? So the idea is there's a flash of light from the Kavod Hashem, and this had caused a lasting effect that damaged his eyes. This is very perceptive from the translator of Targum Yonatan. It certainly could have been. We certainly know today that exposure to too much light can cause eye issues. And a friend of mine in the States who had surgery for cataracts, I asked him, he's older than me, right? So I asked him, I said, hey, what can be done to prevent this? I'd rather not have people cutting on my eyeballs later. And he said, oh, the optometrist said, pardon me, the ophthalmologist said, you need to wear sunglasses. I thought, oh, interesting. So this certainly shows that exposure to bright light over time contributes to this condition of the eyes growing dim. That's specifically, I think this is what Yitschaq had. It's cataracts, right? Because it says they grew dim. It doesn't just say he had trouble seeing or it was nearsighted or something like this. They had grown dim. They'd begun to darken, right? As it's put in Yonatan. That he called Esaw, his elder son, on the 14th of Nisan. By the way, this reminds me, I read the Torah portion in the Greek, also the Septuagint this week. And, you know, Esau's name is Esaw. That's how it's spelled in the Greek as well. And it's quite spectacular that you actually get these names spelled the way it's supposed to be. And earlier in the week, I mentioned to somebody that in the Psalms, when it says it is a psalm of David, in the Greek it says of Daud, which is much closer, right? We would actually expect something like Dawid, right? But still, not having a W sound, they're doing what they can in the Greek to try to make it sound right. And so I just kind of present this out there, some little extra information for you guys when someone's trying to convince you that God's name has a V sound in it. We absolutely know, even in the Septuagint, the names of the Bible that had was, then wa, now vav, are translated as a oo, right? Oh, they're trying to approximate a W sound in the Greek. And there are some manuscripts in the Septuagint that even do this with the name of God, like some fragments they have. All right, continuing on. My son, behold the night. This night on high, praise Adonai of the world, and the treasures of the dew are open in it. And he said, behold, I am, or here I am. Meaning, Sforno comments regarding this phrase, the Vatichena Einaiv, that his eyes grew darkened, just as what happened to the high priest Eli. And this is an important connection that's coming up. So open up your minds, the 16 of you who are here, open up your minds and listen. There's a connection here, a Gezerah Shava with 1 Samuel, with the darkening of the eyes of another spiritual person. So the priest Eli, who had not protested the wrongs committed by his sons, 1 Samuel 3:13. In that instance, the expression used is ve'enaiv kama v'lo yachol lirot, and his eyes they were heightened. I'm not sure what it means by this expression here, but that the eyes would be heightened. Oh, it's okay. I'm sorry. This is not the eyes. So it's saying it's continuous sentence. Something and his eyes. Kama, that he might stand up v'lo yachol, and that he was unable to see lirot, to see. So neither Abraham nor Yaakov experienced such problems in their old age, at the age at which Yitschaq was struck by this affliction. They were both older than Eli, who died at the age of only 98. I love that, only 98. In fact, the Torah reports Abraham's youthfulness in chapter 25, verse 1 of Genesis, when it reports him as taking another wife. Yaakov, with all the troubles he had experienced during his life, was still able to see at age 147 years of age, though with difficulty. Maybe he was just very short-sighted then. As in Genesis 48:8, he is reported as clearly seeing Joseph's sons, though they may have resembled each other, so that he could not tell apart which one was Ephraim and which one was Manasseh. This was in spite of the Torah, 48 verse 10, Genesis, having told us, Yaakov's eyes were heavy with old age. Problems keeping the lids open, perhaps? At any rate, he could see though not with clarity, and that's Sforno. More on the darkened eyes. So what was the reason for Yitzchak's dimmed eyes? What was the spiritual reason? The sages, I've just shown you some sampling. There's a lot of chatter among Chazal about this. And there's different midrashim that discuss different reasons. I was talking with Daniel last night about some things, and he brought up the concept of the idol worship that the wives of Esaw had done, and that there's a midrash that the smoke had come in and blinded Yitzchak's eyes. So thank you for that, Dan. Yeah, that's interesting, right? Interesting that the smoke from their idol worship had actually come in when Esaw brought his wives home to him. But I want to focus on one of the other ideas that the sages have about this that's rooted in Midrash Tanchumah, which is considered a fairly good midrash, fairly reliable, very old. We have many ancient records of people reading from it. Proverbs 17:8 says, "A bribe is like a magic stone in the eyes of the one who gives it. Wherever he turns, he prospers." So think about this concept of a bribe, right? A bribe. By the way, that's limited. Proverbs comes back and shellacks the guy later. Deuteronomy 16:19. "You shall not pervert justice. You shall not show partiality, and you shall not accept a bribe. For a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and subverts the cause of the righteous." So why all this talk about bribes here? What's going on? So the concept is that the reason the Torah tells us how much Yitschaq liked the unkosher food from, when I say unkosher, I just mean that it was hunted rather than slaughtered properly, from his son Esaw, is that this was a sort of bribe. This bribe caused his father to favor him. We're told in the Torah that's why he favored him, because of the gain in his mouth. And there's not a single word in the Torah that's there by accident. Yehoshua says, turns out idol workshop is not environment friendly. Abomination to the leftists. Nice. Shoshana says, wow, Yaakov outdid Moshe with 2020. Yeah. Well, I thought workshop worked fine. I was thinking of an idol workshop. Like they have all these workshops for various concepts. That might have even been better than your original idea. All right, this weekend, free idol workshop. And then they try to sell you the materials in the workshop to start your own idol business. They're pushing their materials. I want to make my own idols. I don't need your copper and tin. Well, But there's this abstract concept of bribery, right? And this is, I think the sages have something on this, that this is what really was happening with our father Yitschaq, that he succumbed to this bribery through mode of favoritism of his son Esaw. Had his wife had not shared with him the prophecy from Hashem, she's considered by many of the sages to be a prophetess, right? Although some say it was Abraham who came and told her the words of the prophecy. Did she not share it? Did Abraham not share it, if that was the case, with Yitschaq, his own son? If he was aware of it, which it seems he had to be, then why does the Torah tell us that this is why he favored Esaw? We have so much in our tradition about what an evil man Esaw was. We're told he was a rapist, that he raped an engaged woman, right? Someone who was betrothed to be married in the fields. And some of you might say, well, this is just midrash. Well, the apostolic writings confirm it. As I mentioned last week, I shared with you the verse. It says that Esau's sexual immorality. Marrying Canaanites would not be considered sexual immorality because he married them. It's a different kind of immorality. He's dishonoring his parents' wishes. So what is this abstract bribery and what are the dangers of it? I want you guys to be thinking about that as we go along in this parasha. Let's get into the rest of the Profunction. verse 2. Vayomer hinena zakanti lo yadati yomoti. And he said, behold, now I have become old. I do not know the day of my death. We learn from Yitschaq Avinu, we should be more concerned with blessing people while we are still alive. For when we are dead, we bless no one. Tichis Kuni and Bechor Shor considers that Yitschaq was aware that Esaw had sold his birthright. So he needed to give him an extra blessing before dying so that he would at least receive something from him. So again, by the commentary of Chizkuni and Bechor Shor, we see that Yitschaq is choosing to close his eyes to the fact that it is Yaakov Avinu who must be blessed. The destiny of our nation and the destiny of the world is tied up in Yaakov, the Ish Tam. Verse 3. Ve'ata samach elecha tevcha ve'kashtecha v'tzei hasadeh v'tzuri tzayid. And some say tzida. This is the Ketiv Karei there. So now, get up, like bring up, please, or now, take up your kelecha, literally your instruments, your tools, telyacha, your quiver, v'kashtecha, and your bow, v'tzei, and go out, hasadeh, to the field, v'tzuda, and hunt there, li, for me, Said, game. No, not an Arab guy named Said. No, bad. Don't do that. Don't hunt Said. Kind of funny he has that name. Okay. I know Josh is going to correct me. It's a strong F sound, probably in the guy's name, right? Now notice, he's not saying, again, Daniel and I, we talked about this a little bit. Could it be that he's trapping somebody, or is he, well, the Hebrew makes it pretty clear because of the tools that he's taking with him that he's not building like traps or something, like little boxes or cages to catch animals. He's bringing a bow and arrow, right? That's his tool, and this is not kosher hunting. You're not allowed to hunt with a bow and arrow. The only types of huntings that are allowed are fishing and special kinds of traps that trap the game in a way that they won't hurt themselves, they won't injure themselves. And even some rabbinic authorities don't allow this because of the fear and panic that the animal falls under, and the chance that the hunter may not come back in time, right? Like if the animal dehydrates while he's waiting for the trap to be checked, then it was a cruel execution, and it's not allowed. We're not allowed to cause pain and suffering to animals. It's forbidden in halakha. It's hard when I share with Hebrew roots guys, especially these Southern guys from the States. Hunting's a big macho thing there. People like hunting. It's a time to bond with your friends, or with your father sometimes, or stepfather, or whatever the case may be, or brothers. They go out. They're out in the brush. It's kind of fun. They're like, they're wearing cool clothing for the occasion. You're having a chat, talking about whatever. You're out in the field, nature. Sometimes you're braving the elements, the snow, or whatever it is. It depends on the kind of hunting and the primal feelings that the hunter experiences, right? And so it's understandable why people would enjoy this. The people enjoy a lot of things that aren't kosher. There's a lot of things we like to do that, and I'm saying this in the hopes that any Hebrew roots people who hear this message will come to the understanding. Two men in the Bible who are labeled as hunters. One is Esaw, the wicked Esaw HaRasha, and the other one is Nimrod, also not the best of men. And so by halakhic exegesis, we can understand that hunter Shem. We got two evil men. The only ones who are called hunters are evil. They're evil. So just because you enjoy the thing doesn't mean that we have to make excuses for it. I like the concept of hunting, right? I like the idea of going out with some buddies and, braving and then bringing home free food. What's not to like, right? But it's not allowed. More often than not, the animal suffers, and it's not a kosher slaughtering. It's not a kosher bleeding. It's not a kosher kill, right? It's far worse than even just the automated decapitation plants that deal with the processed food nowadays. Dr. Rivera says, are rats supposed to receive the same respect when exterminating them? Shoshana says, poor animals. That's a good question. So, all right. So I'm going to inject my own opinion on this. And yeah, when I catch rats, I use rat cages, special rat traps. They're not that expensive. And you can set them up and you put cheese or whatever inside of it. And the rat crawls inside the cage. He yanks at the cheese and the door slaps shut. Yeah, he gets a scare because the trap like jumps off the floor almost, right? Not really, but it moves. And then I take them far away from where I live and I release them out into there's a bunch of empty lots, almost like a forest. So yeah, normal rat traps, they can be pretty bad. I mean, it goes to break the neck. Sometimes it misses and breaks their back. So yeah, I don't think that's kosher. So I would recommend against it. Rat poison is also a very painful death. So there's different ways to deal with mice with rats than this way. I mean, you could have cats. But yeah. Charlotte says, Rob, they'll multiply. Yehoshua says, what if there's an epidemic of rats, like what happened in Australia? Well, then it becomes a case of pekuach nefesh, life risk. When there's a life risk to human beings, we can we're no longer breaking other commands. Those commands give way. The human life is more precious than the rat life, okay? We're not like New York City here where they have special laws that they have to capture entire rat families and move them so that they don't have hurt feelings that one of their relatives is gone or something, right? You can take a thing too far. So, yeah, or the rabbits in Australia, right? So, yeah. I'm not talking about gross dangers to the ecosystem or the local biosphere caused by humans doing stupid things. Yeah. Shoshana says leptospirosis and they destroy things in the house. Dr. Ur says rats can take revenge. Oh, really? I hadn't heard of that. Well, see, so that shows they're intelligent. So if they're intelligent, Kal v'chomer, how much more so should we be trying to kill them humanely? So to those of you who are thinking right now about the dangers of rats and have you tried using the rat trap method I discussed? Have you tried it? If you haven't tried it, then again, it's not that expensive. You can get probably 5 of those rat cages for a few hundred pesos. I mean, if you look in the right place, maybe three of them, and they're quite effective. Taking revenge is interesting. I never heard of that. I'd like to hear more about rat revenge, Doc. Sorry, I'm laughing. It's just I'm thinking about the Disney movies with the Ratatouille and all that stuff. Yoshosha says, what about having cats for chasing and eating rats? Is that indirect cruelty? No, I don't think so. Because that's why I mentioned cats. Even though it bothers me when a cat gets a rat, you've got nature happening now, right? Yeah. And so if anything, the pet cat, it might kill a couple mice or rats in the beginning, but in the end, they'll be frightened of it, and at least they will hide themselves and not be so pronounced, right? They're not going to be bold and walking out in the middle of daylight and embarrassing you when you have your guests over. The cat will keep them at bay. Yeah, okay, that's more complicated. Yosha says, bringing cats for that reason. Yeah, I'd have to discuss this with some other leaders. That's a very good halakhic question. My instinct is still to say no, because what you have is a natural predator and a natural prey. And it's not our jobs to change the nature of the animal, which Hashem has imbued in it, right? So, yeah, but the reason I would want to talk to other leaders about that is if you know cats, then you know that they like to play with mice. It's not a slow death, right? So there might be a lingering question mark on this. I'm not 100% sure. I have to think about that for a while. Yeah, it's a very good question. Yeah. Yosha says it's like a Jew getting Shabbat. Goy, funny comparison, getting a Shabbat goy. Some rabbis say it's direct breaking of Shabbat rules, right, or indirect, right. Yeah, well, I'm one of those. I think it's absolutely a violation. It says, V'gam avdecha, also your servant, right? So they can choose to interpret that slave, but the word is ambiguous in Hebrew, right? It can just be a servant, even a day servant who you pay every day. Yeah, I think the Shabbat goy is anathema. It's terrible, and it's a chilul Hashem. People wield that against us. I'm glad you mentioned it. They use that example against Jews. Seems quite hypocritical, you know. In case you guys don't know what Yehoshua is talking about, there's some Orthodox groups permit a Jewish family to have a Sabbath goy, right? So that means a Gentile who does things for you on the Sabbath that you can't do, right? So they'll turn on the lights, turn off the lights, that kind of stuff. Because in their understanding, non-Jews are allowed to do those things, are allowed to do Sabbath violations, and Jews cannot. And so have the Sabbath goy. But I think this is so far from the Peshat meaning of the Torah when we're told that your servant's not supposed to do anything either, right? He's also supposed to rest. So it's kind of strange to get around it in this way. I've always thought it was strange. Daniel says, a Palestinian, a Muhammad, have a Mohammedan. You're Shabbat Mohammedan. Yehoshua says, historically, it was a goy neighbor. Right, not always a servant, right. That the Jewish families asked for help, setting fire when it goes off Shabbat night. Yeah, but not exactly. That's partly true, Yehoshua. The thing is, even halakha, modern halakha among the Orthodox, from Shulchan Aruch says, you cannot request the Sabbath goy to do anything on Shabbat. So that scenario of the fire going out, that's not really accurate. Because if you need him to do something, you can't ask him to do it on Sabbath. That's the halakha. He has to already know in advance, right? These sorts of things. So if he's a neighbor, that means now he has to become a sentry, checking if your fire is all gone, or like polling, right? He's polling all the time. And now you've given him work, right? You've really tasked him. And usually there'd be some kind of compensation. If he has to poll you all day Sabbath, well, you're going to have him over for a meal, you're going to give him some money or something. So it gets complicated real fast. It seems like you actually are, he is under your employ now, so now he is an eved, right? He's become a servant. Yehoshua says, like, what can you do if the fire goes off when it's freezing? The Jew can light the fire if that's the case. Yeah. If that happens, it's permitted. Because the concept of pekuach nefesh, of life risk, it doesn't mean imminent life risk, right? It's not just saying like you're in the desert and you had no water for 3 days and you see water coming up, but it's Sabbath, can you dig or not, right? Okay, that is for sure allowed. But the way that the sages interpret life risk is even if there's a small chance of death, then it's already, that's why it's life risk, not like imminent death, right? They don't call it imminent death. Instead, it's called life risk, right? It's a risk to the nefesh. So yeah, in that case, if you live in a very cold area and you don't have LPG, you don't have natural gas to heat your home and use a fire, and somehow the fire goes out, yeah, you can light that fire. That's an example when you can light a fire on the Sabbath day. You don't have to have a Sabbath goy do it. You do it yourself. Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yeah, Josh says, interesting, was going to ask you, how do we define pekuach nefesh? Right. So this is why doctors generally are allowed on Shabbat, because if you think about it, on the surface, it doesn't make sense unless they're an ER doc, right? So you might think, why are pretty much all doctors allowed to work on Shabbat? And the reason why not just ER doctors are allowed is because any doctor, which is especially a doctor in a hospital, but any doctor, there's always some kind of chance that someone coming in to that doctor, I mean, more than a 1% chance, someone coming in that he's going to catch something or she will catch something that will save their life in the end, right? And if it doesn't happen, then maybe their life isn't saved, right? So this is why, although you might kind of start to draw the line with certain types of, like say, plastic surgeons, right? Like, maybe he doesn't have to be there on Shabbat. It's not necessarily a life risk. But then you could come back with the argument, well, if the person's face is deformed, maybe they eventually commit suicide. So the sages tend to be very lenient on what constitutes a life risk. Yeah. Nice conversation. Any other questions or comments? So back to the rat thing. Yeah, on the surface, I would say, yeah, if you want to get a cat for that reason, sure. But just understand that a cat requires lots of attention, requires love, and it's not like people think that they're just aloof. cats, there's so many different personalities among cats. Every cat is different. I had this one cat that died a few years back. We had kind of suddenly an attack where so many cats were dying. It was very strange. Anyway, this cat, his name was Boof, and he's an orange cat, and he loved to bite me, just bite so hard on my arm, and he'd be purring while he was biting me. It was painful, but he made me laugh, and he'd always come whenever I called him. I'd go, Boof, here, Boof, Boof, and he'd come running wherever he's at, and then I'd be petting him, and then he'd start biting me. They're all different. And so if you did get a cat just for the purpose of hunting mice, the halakha might be a little bit different, that you have to make sure you're not being cruel to that cat, right? That, either there's two of them, right, so that he's not lonely, or that you give him attention, the attention he requires, the companionship that a feline needs. Right? People oftentimes think only dogs want the human attention, but cats need it just as well. It's just they have a personality that's quite deep, and you have to learn that cat's personality. Dr. Devarim says elective surgeries are not allowed on Shabbat. Amen. Exactly. That's right. That's right. You want to get a nose job. Say you got this long schnoz and you want to get it shorter. You can't do that on Shabbat. And the surgeon can't work on it on Shabbat either. That's not allowed, right? Yeah. Good point. But the vast majority of things can be done. If there's any kind of life risk, you can extend this to like a lifeguard at a beach, right? Say there's a lifeguard at a beach, and then the normal lifeguard calls in sick, and there's nobody else except the Jewish lifeguard, right? Or we'll say the Israelite, the Ben Yisrael, right? Someone who's been grafted in or born in Israel. He has to go now, right? Because he's there to save lives, right? So that's just another example. It's not just doctors. There are other cases. Or even a police officer might have to serve on Shabbat. Because there's a very real possibility they could get involved in saving a life. Shoshana says, just don't get lazy uncarrying Garfield. Right. Knocking your plants off I have a cat like that. Loves to knock my stuff down on the floor. Loves to break things. Just sits there looking at me like, no. I think of him like Putin. He's like, mushto. What's the problem? He's just breaking stuff, whatever he can for no reason. Sorry for the dark humor. Just break stuff, tortures the mice. All right, let's continue. Shoshana says, just eats and lays around all day, right? Hates Mondays. All right, hold on. My laser pointer turned off for some reason. Do you see it? Okay. Verse 4. V'aseh mad amim kasher ahavti v'havia li ve'ochela bavur tevarechecha nafshi b'terem amut. Sorry, b'terem amut. Now make for me mat amim. These are like tasty foods, dainties, special food. Kasher, like ahavti, I love, like the ones I love. The heviyah li, and bring them to me. This is probably an emphatic hey here at the end. The ochela, that I might eat them. Again, emphatic hey or cohortative. So these are little exclamation points all over the place as he's thinking about the mat amim. Again, further evidence of the sensual bribes that are taking place here in Yitschaq's mind. And don't misunderstand me. I'm not judging our ancestor when I'm talking about this. We all fall prey to this. And this is actually the recurring theme of today's drash, and what you all to be thinking about are the bribes in our lives. So in Yitzhak's case, it's filled with excitement. Even he's on his deathbed, and he's just so excited about the food, the improperly slaughtered food that his wicked son will make for him. Ba'alvur, so that on that account, or because of that thing, tevarechecha nafshi, my soul will bless you. B'terem amut, before I die. Verse 5. V'rivka shomat medaber Yitschaq el Esaw beno vayelech Esaw hasadeh latzot lehavi. Now Rivka heard, or she was listening, when Yitzchak was speaking unto Esaw, his son. Vayelech Esaw. When Esaw left, when he went, hasadeh, to the field, latzu, to hunt Said, game, or the Arab guy, Said, lehavi, to bring it back. All right, so she was listening to the whole thing. The Targum Yonatan makes an interesting observation here. Listen how he translates this. It says, and Rivka heard by the Holy Spirit as Yitschaq spake with Esaw, his son. And Esaw went to the field to take venison to bring it. Okay, isn't that interesting? Yeah, and Targum also further clarifies the animal as venison, right? As deer. So that's nice because we at least know it's a kosher animal. Like Dan and I, again, we're talking about this last night. Was the animal not kosher or was it kosher? And, yeah. So we see the animal was kosher. It's just his method invalidated it. So we have different terms for meats, right? So in rabbinical Hebrew, if the animal is of a class that is not kosher, then it's tameh, right? It's an unclean animal, right? Like even Noach knew about the unclean animals, right? Well, God tells him, right? Take a pair of each unclean and 7 pairs of all the clean ones, right? All the tahor animals, the pure, the ones that cannot be possessed by demons, right? Take 7 pairs of those. And for the unclean ones, it's just 1 pair, right? Now, if an animal is from either the unclean category or the clean category, and it's not killed properly, this is called treif. And this worked back into late rabbinical Hebrew from Yiddish. It comes from biblical Hebrew, taraf, to tear, right? Because we're told in the Torah that you're not supposed to eat food that you found that's been torn, right? Like an animal tore it, means killed it by tearing with his mouth or whatever. You can't eat that. And so that became, the taraf became treif in Yiddish. And so even in English, Jews will say treif. Oh, don't eat that, that's treif, just meaning not kosher, right? So it's a more general term. It's not kosher, meaning either the category of the animal is not kosher, like a rabbit, right? Or it wasn't killed properly, right? They tortured it to death, or they, like, is it fauga, or what's it called? The duck that they force feed? They force feed a duck. In France, there's some special dish. They make the duck super fast, force feeding the thing. Remember the Times were telling me about this before the lockdown, and we were wondering if it's kosher. I've decided it's not kosher, but oh, thank you. Foie gras petit. Ooh la la. Oui, oui, mademoiselle. Mwah. Yeah, sorry, my French is terrible. Okay, so a lot of you responded there. Thank you for that. Foie gras, yeah. So I think that's not kosher. Force feeding the animal. It doesn't sound too fun for the animal, right? So if you torture an animal, it's not kosher, right? Or we used to joke. There's this place called El Pollo Loco, right? It's a Mexican restaurant in the States, and I've seen a few chains here in Philippines. I don't know if they have them in UK. Maybe Josh can chime in. El Pollo Loco, the crazy chicken, right? And we used to joke that they beat the chicken before they serve it and makes it taste better, right? They're like beating it up and then fill it with fear. Oh, it tastes great. You can taste the fear. If somebody did that, that chicken's not kosher anymore. So you can take a kosher animal and make the food treif, right? It won't make it tameh, like it's from an impure animal, but it makes a pure animal treif because it was frightened, it was tortured, the blood was not drained out, so you're getting that animal blood inside of you. And remember, the nefesh, the life force is in the blood, the soul's in the blood. Yeah, pollo, look, I always joke that, I live in Antipolo. I call it Antipollo. They're against chickens here. The vegetarian county. Ted says they inject chicken with hormones to make them plump and large. Yeah, this is another issue. That's actually more of a health issue. So, yeah, I'm not in favor of eating hormones either. Yeah. Again, another conversation with Dan from years back. Actually, I think I could just go with this, right? He was talking about if you eat too much chicken, you get man boobs from the hormones. Ted says KFC. Could be. Let's just be real careful because I've seen a lot of Moti Shamra about fast food places floating around. There's a Hebrew roots friend of mine here in the Philippines, and I won't say his name, but because lots of you know him. But anyway, he's into all kinds of conspiracy theories. Like, he would tell me, "Don't use your microwave, right? Because it's radiation." And I was just like, putting my hand in my face. No, it's not that kind of radiation. It's like, This is just basically using geometry. All it does is move the water around. Although there have been studies that milk in the microwave is not a good idea, right? But most other foods, you're just moving the water around. It's not like, gamma rays or something. And like, what was the one I wanted to share with you? You made me think about it. Darn it, there was one. Oh, right. This person told me, I can't believe it. He told me, don't eat at McDonald's. At McDonald's, they have worms in the meat. And this is a smart person, okay? I said, what? He said, yeah. I said, please, that's not true. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And the main strategy behind the industry is real estate investment. They buy good properties. That's why you go to all the tourist places, there's a McDonald's there. So that the property goes up in value, they can borrow against it. The franchise does well. Even if they close down the franchise, they're profitable. There hasn't been a single McDonald's franchise in the history of the chain that did not succeed, right? Sometimes they close it and they move it or whatever, but so they've all made profit, right? So you have to have $1 million in the States to have a McDonald's franchise in the bank, plus whatever you pay for the franchise. They're very careful. They're not going to risk it by saving a little money to use worms instead of beef, right? They have their own farms. I remember in Russia, McDonald's bought their own farms for cows because they didn't like the quality of the beef they were getting from the Russian farmers. So they opened their own farms up, right? They're very careful with quality control. I'm not saying it's healthy, not by any standard of the meat. I'm not saying it's healthy, but there's no worms in the McBurgers, right? And then he went on to say, no, I was talking to a farmer here in Philippines about it. He told, I was buying earthworms for one of my projects, and he said one of his customers is McDonald's. He said the manager himself said, shh, don't tell anybody. And I just, again, this is a very, very smart person I'm talking to. I don't know how this happens. Can we please think, people? Can we just think a little bit, please? I wanted to cry. It's like, please, how does that make sense? He's trusting some rando farmer with the top secret news that will destroy their business. For sure, it's a Jollibee's guy buying the worms for the Jolly Burgers and saying it's McDonald's. And I know for a fact that Jollibee's uses slave labor. They use slave labor. Workers at Jollibee's in the Philippines have to do what's called charity time. So these are poor people working in a low-paying job, and they're forced to work hours and hours for free. It's called charity time. And if there's leftover food, the workers have to buy it. So I never go to Jollibee's because I do not support slavery. I'm against slavery in all forms, especially if it's not by choice. If the person had a debt and they couldn't pay it and they decided to become a slave for 7 years, that's different. But to oppress the poor like that, what a wicked corporation Jollibee's is. Just evil. Okay, so this is Shoshana says, why did Rivka ask for 2 choice kids? Oh, I'm sorry, I missed Dan's comment. Oh, you changed the topics. No, it's not gossip. I know workers. I know workers who worked there before. This is a fact. This happens. This charity time. Yeah, and in fact, I'm told that it's common with many Filipino employers in the culture here to just kind of do that to your workers. I don't know, that part I'm not sure of. You guys would have to chime in, but yeah, this is. Yeah. Now maybe it's limited to certain Jollibee branches, right? So maybe I shouldn't impugn the whole franchise, but yeah, this is so illegal in the United States to do something like that to an hourly worker, to say you're going to work for free for a few hours. Tet says the Ruach gives discernment, also women's intuition. Shoshana said, why did Rivka ask for 2 choice kids? Yitschaq can't. Hold on. Okay, well, hold on. Lots of comments coming in. I hit a nerve with attacking Jollibee's. By the way, those of you outside of the Philippines, Jollibee's is like McDonald's copy that's here in the Philippines. They got a big B. He's happy, and it's the same kind of model that McDonald's is, and except the workers are slaves. Okay, let's see. Okay, Daniel says, can he even supply McDonald's? Yeah, right. Yeah, how many worms would it take to make the burgers? Like, yeah, okay, bring it back. And my point was that people, they believe anything. It's just, I mean, they believe what they want to believe, right? So, yeah. And regarding Jollibee's, at the very least, I have eyewitness accounts from a very reliable source, right, that this happens. Charity time, that's the concept. Yeah, when the president here came into power, with all the talk about fighting for the workers and stuff, I expected to see, oh, they're going to shut that down now. Great. They're going to fight for the poor, and they're going to stop the charity time at businesses, make it really illegal with huge fines and jail time maybe. Fortunately, that has not happened. Shoshana says, why did Rivka ask for 2 choice kids? Yitzhak can't eat all that. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but I have a feeling there must be a midrash out there. If anybody knows, please teach us why the 2 kids. Maybe she's just being careful in case like she burns one or something, right? Or so that she can really get the best cut of the meat. Like, sometimes when you're cooking, some meat you can tell is more tender than others. Like you could cut it with a spoon even. Maybe she's just doing it to make it the best of the best, right? So much is at risk. Our national identity is at risk. The Mashiach's line is at risk, right? All the stuff is at risk. It must be Yaakov. It cannot be Esaw Harasha. By the way, I hope I didn't offend anyone. If you have Jollibee stock, then you should sell your stock. No, I'm just kidding. It's just I get offended when I hear these things, like about the loan sharks here in the Philippines. We talked about a couple of whiles. By the way, we have wrongs in America too. I'm picking on Philippines because this is where I live. I can pick on America all day long too. I mean, we have abortion in America, okay? So there's plenty of sin to go around. So don't let your patriotism, the Pinoy pride come up. Oh, how dare you talk against my country? Look, I got plenty to say against my countries and stuff that happens in Israel, right? So it's not that at all right? We need to call things as we see them. We are citizens of the kingdom of God before we are citizens of whatever country, X, Y, and Z, where we just happen to be born, right? Just because you're born there, right? I've seen people who are so blind to obvious truths because of some kind of vague nationality or willing to tolerate horrible sins like the murder of babies by governments. Friends of mine, just because they're so tied to this feeling for the country or whatever, these things happen. And we need to make sure that we are not being bribed by these emotions, that they're not getting the best of our Yetzer Hara, that they're not enforcing the Yetzer Hara, that they're not helping us to make bad decisions. Because it's not just other people that bribe us. We bribe ourselves. We allow ourselves to be bribed, even by the spirits all around us. Most people don't get possessed. Most of the time, they just hear a whispering spirit, right? A spirit mutters. Isaiah talks about them, some of them as mutterers, some of them as chirpers, making various sounds, right? There's other titles that are used for various kinds of spirits, and they just get the attention of our neshama, and the neshama goes, huh? And then accepts the download, right? It's not a possession or something like this, but it happens. We allow ourselves to be bribed, right? We want to be patriots. We want to be whatever it is. We want to think that, oh, our people could surely not do wrong, surely not do such stupid, foolish things like X, Y, Z. But it happens. Shoshana said, Jollibee sacked a young crew for no vaccination. Right, yeah. And this happened a lot in the States, too, with many companies doing that kind of stuff, making workers not have control over their body, over what's put in their body. I was talking with Joshua about this a couple weeks ago. Well, he was kind of ranting about it to a group chat we were having. And he was talking about how, look, in the UK, there's some places that they wanted to do this, force people to get vaccinations. Unfortunately, that's been stopped. But in a free society, no one should be able to force you to put something in your body that you don't want. And I agree with that. Ted says it's pressure from business and industry leaders. Also, it's the government. The government sets the tone a lot of times. Like the president of the United States, the walking zombie, President Biden, right? The half dead, the weekend at Bernie's president that we have. And he sends these signals out to the industry that you should do this. You should force your employees to be vaccinated. First, he tried to force it, but then our court system stopped him. He was sued by the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's organization, and others joined in the lawsuit, and they won in court. Federal court said, no, this is unconstitutional. The president and other government agencies like the Shoah, whatever it's called, the workers, I can't think of it right now, the Shoah. Anyway, we have an organization to make sure that workers' rights are not violated, and they were the ones that were supposed to force the vax, right, for health reasons. So our court system said, no, you can't do that. But in the meantime, other countries, they follow the lead of the U.S., right? Oh, the president's saying to force them to be vaxxed, and then they force their people to be vaxxed. So that wickedness comes out from Biden and his administration, and other presidents copy the idea, or they can be evil on their own. They don't have to copy. Okay. So someone writes me in private, who used to be a Jollibee worker, that the franchise or company are all using the charity time, that all of the franchises, they do this. So they've been in discussion with other people who are Jollibee workers who confirmed it. So yeah, these are reliable witnesses, Torah keepers, I trust them. So this is not Motzi Shemra against this corporation. This is a fact. this happens at Jollibee's. They exploit the poor, make them buy the food that's not eaten by everybody else at the end of the day to make sure there's no losses for the corporation, and they make them work free hours. This is not training we're talking about. This is just a normal work cycle. This happens. Such wickedness. So I boycott Jollibee's. I never go there because I hate corporations that use child labor and that force slavery on people or oppress the poor. Okay, Daniel says even though I like their tuna pocket whatever thing, Dan says some sages say it's foreshadowing of Yom Kippur. Oh, the two gang. Oh, that's interesting. I like that. Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, did you guys get that? Answering I think Ted's question about why would she take 2 kids, right, and cook them up? And so, of course, on Yom Kippur, we've got the one is for the Kippurah, right, for the covering, for the purging of the people, and the other is for Azazel, to go to the name of the Son of God who led the rebellion to come down and take human wives, right? So, and then brought all kinds of wickedness, right? So, the idea that this sin belongs to you, Azazel, so it gets sent out to Azazel, right? You own it. It's yours. So it's kind of God slapping Azazel in the face. Yeah, I like that. Nice foreshadowing on that. Maybe it's about the 2 sons too, right? Ted says so much evil in this world. Beth says Jollibee Crew is outsourced to a placement agency. Yeah, but that doesn't mean the management decisions would be not approved by Jollibee Corp. You know what I mean? You tell your consultants what to do. I was a consultant for most of my career, and it's not like I could just make my own decisions, or those that I told what to do, like I could tell them something against company policy. Outsourcing is just a way that companies in the Philippines get away from having to pay benefits. It's just another way to oppress the poor. They don't want to pay them Social Security beyond measure, and they don't want to do health insurance and these other, so they outsource. So that's just another example of their wickedness, the fact that they're outsourcing. But it's the policy. You can't have managers enacting policy that the company doesn't allow. And I don't believe the managers are outsourced. You could check me on that. I might be wrong. Okay. By the way, Beth might be agreeing with me. We're not arguing. We're just back and forth. 2 Jews, 3 opinions, right? So please, nobody get offended. If I say something that's off or that you disagree with, feel free to push back. This is a safe space. you can disagree with me. It's totally fine and encouraged. I like the back and forth. I like when we can try to get to the truth. Ted says, Amen, we are a kingdom citizen. That's right, that is our home. Our home is the kingdom of God. It shouldn't be American patriotism or Filipino patriotism or or Vietnamese patriotism or UK, whatever, right? It's okay to have those extended feelings of love for one's country because it's kind of like loving one's family, right? Even Israel, proud to be Israeli or whatever. Okay, that's okay, but this pride in one's people, this is another kind of bribery to our neshama. How many times, and by the way, I'm not picking on people, myself included, I do this often, I get very proud about our military, right? I heard you can't shoot nothing. Muslims, you can't shoot nothing. You can't hit nothing. Just like, look how great our technology is. Look how great our soldiers are. I was watching a show earlier this week, and in the show, it's kind of stupid. I don't want to say the name of the show. In the show, this drug lord, hired Mossad to defend them, right? So yeah, Mossad, Israeli. So how stupid is that? To be proud about a drug lord hiring Israeli soldiers, right? That they would work for it. But the point is that the whole world knows how awesome our soldiers are, right? How great the Mossad is, how etc. The reach of Mossad. But we have to be careful because this kind of national pride is bribing our souls. It's bribing us to do what? To deprive Hashem of the glory. So a realignment and realizing our citizenship is in the kingdom, this can shield us from this. This can shield us from ending up supporting, some of us, we might end up supporting regimes that are evil, that force abortions of children, right? We can get led down this path out of national pride, trying to make excuses for the government. When really, when we realize that the new man is a citizen in Israel, and meaning spiritual Israel, meaning the kingdom that God planned when he sent Abraham out right after he divorced the nations. That should be where our pride is. That's our citizenship. Like Yeshua says, who's my brother and my mother and my sister, right? Who is it? Those who are in the kingdom of God. Those are our real brothers and sisters and parents and children
Hey, this is the end of this Drosh segment. Thanks for watching. Please support this ministry if you'd like to stand with us financially. You can visit patreon.com at the address on the screen and sign up for a monthly or one-time donation. We would be very thankful for having your support. And join the conversation at t.me/messianic chat. All kinds of chats about messianic topics happen over there with over 50 people. All glory to Adonai. Kol kavod l'Adonai.